Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to another edition of the Sunday School Review. This Sunday's lesson is entitled Living Faith. It's taken from the book of James, the second chapter, verses 14 through 26. We are still in the book of James for this week's lesson. In this chapter of James, the second chapter, that is the 14th through the 26th verse, is the essence of this chapter is about the theme of James, which is, does your faith work, or faith that works? Now, we're going to be talking about faith that works, or faith that is genuine or real in this particular chapter, starting with our first outline, which is entitled Living Faith. The first subsection of this outline is entitled Speech or Action. And you probably heard the phrase that actions speak louder than words. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. Not just mere words, but action. And the very first verse, which is verse 14, let us read that. What does it profit, my brethren, though a man say he hath faith and have not works? Can faith save him? Now, if you look at this verse carefully, you'll see in the verse there are two questions that is posed in this verse. When we look at that, it says, "What profit you, my brethren, if a man say?" Now, note that word "say." If you say that you have faith and have not works, that is evidence to back up your faith, what profited? And have not faith, can that save you? And that is a question. And the short answer, and we're going to explore it a little bit, but the short answer is no. Just saying that you have faith and no evidence to back it up, that in and of itself cannot save you. Now, along with this first verse, the question is really, is your faith just an empty claim? Now, as a matter of fact, you can say anything. I can say that I'm a billionaire, but do I have evidence to back up my claim? Otherwise, my saying is just an empty claim. And this is what James is talking about here. Faith that works. Now, so the short answer to the question that is posed in verse 14, if you just say that you have faith and no evidence to back it up, no works to back it up, can that faith save you? And the answer to that is no, it cannot. Let's go to verse 16. And 16 said, "And one of you say," here's the word again, say, "unto them, depart in peace, be warmed and filled, notwithstanding ye give them not those things which are needful to the body." Here's another question. Does it profit? And the short answer to that is no, it does not. Now, let's look at that. You say to a person, you see them, in need. There is a scripture that tells us that if you see your brother or sister in need and shut up the bowels of compassion, how dwelleth the love of God in you? Just telling them, well, I see you in need. I see you hungry. And actually, I did not read verse 15. Let's go read that. If a brother or sister is naked and destitute, and then we go into 16. So we see our brother naked or scantily dressed, is this referred to, not that they are stark naked, but they are scantily dressed and not sufficient for the conditions, and you see them hungry, and you say to them, well, God bless you. God bless you. You know, wasn't that a nice service today? What does that do to satisfy their need? Absolutely nothing. It does not serve them at all. All you're doing is, as again I said, if one, you say unto them empty words, nothing to back it up, don't give them any assistance whatsoever, just say to them, well, God bless you. That does not profit. It says, what does it profit? And the simple answer is nothing. It doesn't profit them nothing. It does nothing to service their needs. There is no works there. All it is mere words. Now, let's go into the next verse. And the next set of verses, the sub-theme for that is alive or dead. Now, remember, we are talking about faith that works, a faith that is alive and not dead. Okay, let's read verse 17. Even so, faith, if it has not works, is dead, being alone. So anyone can say something. As I said earlier, anyone can say anything they want. But do you have the evidence to back up your claim? If you have no evidence to back up your claim, it's just a false claim. So there has to be evidence, that is works, to back up your claim, to back up your faith. Now, and let's clear something up. We are studying now the book of James, and we understand Paul talks about grace and faith. He says we are saved by grace and not works. Now, let's be clear here. James and Paul is not contradicting themselves. Now, what Paul is talking about, he's talking about the initial salvation, and it's going to be explained in the next outline. He is talking about the initial salvation is by grace and not by works. But James is talking about once we are saved by grace, in order to back up, in order to show evidence of our faith, there has to be works, and there will be works if your faith is real or genuine. Otherwise, it's not real. It's not genuine. Okay, let's look at verse 18. And that subsection in our lesson is entitled Vain Faith. And verse 18 reads, yea, a man say, here we have the word again, say. If a man say, thou hast faith, and I have works, show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show you my faith by my works. Now, if you have faith, it will be evidenced by works. You will have works to show for that. Otherwise, you don't have real faith or genuine faith. In other words, your faith is dead. You have dead faith. And this is what Paul is saying. I will show you my faith by my works. Now, you have, in order to show faith, you have to have something to witness that, to back it up. And the works he's talking about is that evidence. Back to the other verse, you just said, well, God bless you. Be warm, be filled, and don't provide anything. It's just words, mere words. And let's go into verse 19. Now, and the subsection for that is bare belief or just belief. In other words, another way to phrase that is belief enough, belief alone enough to save one or to save you. And let's read verse 19. Thou believest that there is one God. Now that's correct. The Bible deals with that there's one God. There's only one God. Thou believest there's one God, you do well. That's correct doctrinal. That's according to the scripture. There's only one God. That's good. That's good. The devils also believe and tremble. Now, so it's clearly telling you that bare belief, a mere belief alone, is not what is going to save you. Okay, because the demons or the devil, they got that right, that there's only one God, but, and they believe that, but is it backed up? Is there any action behind it? Let me give you an example here. Let's say that you're on a ship and it's a few miles from shore. And maybe the ship stalled for whatever reason. And you see the lifeboats being dispatched from the ship. You see people getting into the lifeboats and they are safely taken to shore. And you believe that. You believe, you say, I believe if I get in this lifeboat that I can be safely taken to shore. But as long as you stay on deck and make that claim and don't actually get into the boat, you will not be saved. So merely sitting on the ship saying, "Oh, I believe," or you may be at the airport, sitting on the runway, the tarmac, and say, "I believe if I board this plane." I'm in New York. I believe if I board this plane, it's going to take me to LA. But you fail to get on the plane, you're not gonna get there. You're not gonna be taken to your destination. So as verse 19 is telling us, merely belief alone will not save you. That's in essence what is saying. You have to have saving faith, not merely believing. And now the next verses, we read verse 19. Now let's go to verse 20, and we're going to read them one at a time, but the last few verses in the lesson gives us examples of real or genuine faith. And the two examples that is given here in James is from the Old Testament. The first example is that of the patriarch Abraham. Now we know Abraham was a Jew. He was a righteous man. God imputed righteousness to him. And the other example, also from the Old Testament, is a Gentile named Rahab. And according to the scripture, Rahab, she was a Gentile, but she was also a prostitute. So we see two extremes here. A very righteous man, that is Abraham, and a harlot, Rahab. But James used these two as examples of individuals that display their faith, and as a result, they receive salvation. So we see the two extremes. So in most likelihood, the entire world is going to fit between those two extremes. We have the one extreme, Abraham being a righteous man, righteousness was imputed to him, and Rahab being a harlot. So you're going to fit in the middle somewhere. So there is hope for everyone. There's hope for everyone here. Now let's go to 20 and deal with the first example, i.e. Abraham. But wilt thou know, O van man, that faith without works is dead? Was not Abraham our father justified by works? Verse 21, continue, when he offered Isaac his son upon the altar. Now, as I said, and this is one example of faith that is real, that is genuine. And we know about Abraham was considered a righteous man. Now, this was many years before the idea he went through the process of offering his son up to on the altar. Now, the story was that when God first approached Abraham, at that time he didn't have any children. And God told him that to look up into the heavens and look at the stars and look at the sand on the seashore. And he said, you will have that many children. And Abraham did not question God. He just said, I believe it. I believe that. There was no discussion of, well, how is this going to happen and all of that. Abraham just believed God. Now that was, I think they said about 40 years before he actually went through the process of offering his son up. So Abraham obeyed God without question. And that showed tremendous faith. And subsequently we know he backed it up because he was intended to go through the process, even though we know the story. God never intended was have him to sacrifice his son. But Abraham had so much faith, so much obedience, and that was displayed, that he would go through with the deal. And verse 20 again, that faith without works, faith without evidence, is not real faith. It's not genuine. It is dead faith. And 20, was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered his Isaac his son upon the altar? He demonstrated it, his obedience to God. He demonstrated that. And 22, seest thou how faith wrought with his works? Now that again was evidence, and by works was faith made perfect in 23, and that the scripture was fulfilled which said, Abraham believed God, and it was imputed to him for righteousness, and he was called a friend of God. This word imputed faith was reckoned. It was reckoned or imputed unto him as righteousness. Now, this happened, as I said, many years before he was asked to offer up his son Isaac. And 23 said, Abraham believed God. When God spoke, Abraham just believed it. And his belief was manifested, was demonstrated. So Abraham was considered righteous when he believed. That was about 40 years before it was demonstrated. He carried out or attempted to carry out the request by God. And verse 24, ye see that how that by works a man is justified, and not by faith only. In other words, in order to show evidence of faith, there has to be works, there has to be some evidence that must be displayed, that will be displayed. If your faith is real or genuine. Otherwise, your saying is just an empty claim. It's an empty claim because you can't back it up. Now, the other example is with Rahab. And verse 25 said, likewise, also was not Rahab the harlot justified by works when she had received the messengers and had sent them out another way? And the story is, we're not going to go much into it, but when the spies were sent out and they were after them, and as I said, Rahab was not a Jew, she was a Gentile. But she said, we have heard about how your God has been working on your behalf. And when the spies came, she hid the spies. And when they came looking for them, she hid them. And she told those that were looking, well, they went that way. And then when they left, she told the spies to say, okay, well, you go this way. And she had been made a promise that when the destruction come, that they would spare her and her family. And the deal was that she was to tie a rope, a red, scarlet rope on her, out of her window, and she would be spared. And that was the case. Now, she demonstrated, again, just like Abraham, she demonstrated her faith. She just didn't say, well, yeah, I'm going to protect you, but she put it in action. She, number one, she hid the spy, hid the spies. That was the first thing. And then once they made an agreement, she took action, and she acted upon what they had told her, and she believed that. She trusted that. So again, here she is, a Gentile, a harlot, but nevertheless, her faith proved real or genuine, because she had faith and she acted, not just say. So faith that is real will be demonstrated. Now, in the last verse of our lesson, that is verse 26, which is kind of like a summary, as for the body, without the spirit is dead. Now, that's the biblical definition of death. So faith without works is dead also. Now, it's just like if you go to a funeral, they say, well, they sure look natural. They sure look good, but they're dead. They're dead. Now, they may look good, but they are dead. And so this is what this lesson is saying. If you don't have works, you can say, I believe, that's good, but you must have works to back up your faith. Otherwise, it is an empty claim. So we want to have live or active faith, not dead faith. If there is words, mere words alone, and nothing to back up your claim, your faith is void, is void, is no good. So we'd like to thank you for watching today. We'd like you to join in next week for another edition of the Sunday School Review. Thank you.